Deion Smith is worth all of this for Ole Miss. Trust me.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Hotty toddy, everyone. Today on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, we're talking about Deion Smith, who didn't practice tonight as it was recorded by Bruce Feldman of The Athletic, Chuck Rounsaville of the Ole Miss Spirit, David Johnson and the Ole Miss Rebels. Is there a snag? Maybe. Is there a problem? No, I don't think so. Deion Smith is positioned to be the secret weapon for Jackson Dart and unlocking secondaries to make it life easier for Trey Harris and Juice Wells, making them even better. He's worth the wait. And I'm not certain the situation, and I'm certain, I should say, this situation will be resolved soon. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. And don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC and Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy. They offer different perspectives on college football, the SEC, and even Ole Miss. So check them out. You know how I feel about perspectives. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Deion Smith did not practice last night, as was widely reported from Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. I think Chuck Rounsaville talked about that as well, that he was going to be practicing very soon. David Johnson, who is very in on that as well. Now, like I said in the intro, is there a problem? No, I do not think there is a problem. Is there a snag? Maybe. This feels like there's a little I's dotting and T's crossed type situation that preventing him from getting on the field. Is he going to get on the field? Yes, likely. I'm almost certain that he will get on the field at some point and sometime relatively soon. And with Ole Miss having 4 non-conference games and a nice little ramp-up time for Deion Smith, I do not think he will be overly affected by the time SEC play gets here. Now, I do think that he is the potential secret weapon for this offense. I think that he offers and can do things in his skill set that will make Trey Harris and Juice Wells and Jordan Watkins and Kaden Prieskorn even better as a wide receiver. In terms, it'll make Jackson Dart even better and the run game better. In whole, the offense is going to be better with the addition to Deion Smith than without it. How do I know that? Everybody's going to say, how do you know that, Steve? You're just guessing. You're just assuming. I'm going off obvious talent with Deion Smith. And I'm not saying that Deion Smith is going to catch 90 balls and 15 touchdowns and all of that. That's not what this is about. Trey Harris is the alpha on this receiving unit. Juice Wells is going to be an excellent receiving unit. So what I want from Deion Smith is for him to make defenses respect him. That is all that is required of Deion Smith this season. Make defenses respect them to where you can't automatically double team Trey Harris, where you can't automatically double team Juice Wells or Kaden Prieskorn. Make defenses respect Deion Smith. And Deion Smith has the talent and the athleticism and the size and the physicality and the movement, all of these skills to make it to where those things can happen, to where you're going to immediately go into the game planning on double teaming number 9. He is going to be the person that draws every single eye from every single defender. You need to have somebody that can make a defense pay whenever that happens. And that person's Deion Smith, his athleticism, his catch radius, his athleticism. I think I said that already. To the point where Holmes County community colleges were running jailbreak screens from their own 3-yard line. Look at his huddle film of what's going on. They chose to do that because of his athleticism. What he brings and the skill set that will inevitably happen. And we've seen this with wide receivers from the Mississippi JUCOs for the last 40 years. They will make you pay attention to them. And any attention you take off of Trey Harris, any attention you take off of Juice Wells, any attention that you take off the running game, that is going to make the entire offense better. And the difference between Ole Miss having a typical top 10 level offense, which is what they've had for the last 4 years, to having a potentially elite offense, a 2022 Tennessee, a 2019 LSU, heck, a 2023 LSU. The potential to have that exists on the fact of how you can affect the defense in your wide receiver game. If they can focus to take away your best piece and actually do that, is your offense going to get stagnant like it did against Alabama a year ago? You didn't have Trey Harris. You had an injured Kaden Prieskorn, and Alabama in their first round corners were able to take away players. Deion Smith will prevent that from happening. Juice Wells is going to be better because of that. Jordan Watkins, Trey Harris, the running game. Do not overlook the running game, because I do think there's a situation with as many RPOs as Ole Miss runs over the course of a season that the defense just, hey, we're not going to mess with these wide receiver units. We're going to give them a run read right off the bat, and we're going to try and run blitz to cut that off. I think that could be a strategy for defenses that Ole Miss go up against, because this wide receiver unit, both the starters and the second and third team, they look really, really good. And Deion Smith makes them even better. And he's worth all of this. I want everybody to understand that he's worth all of this. I've seen film of every one of his JUCO games at Holmes County Community College. I've looked at what he did. I saw how defenses handled him. I saw how Holmes County Community College handled him. Now, what I also looked at when I was looking at that is this the type of person that will get any attention from the defense? I really liked Dayton Wade. I really liked Jordan Watkins. But outside of Trey Harris, nobody grabbed the defense's attention. Alabama and Georgia knew that they could man up and get really physical with those wide receivers and essentially take them out of the game. It's a situation that Ole Miss has dealt with for the last 50 years, to the point where these are really good wide receivers, but whenever you come up against really elite cornerbacks, they can just really affect what you're doing. You need something to take some of the attention off of Trey Harris. You need that special athlete. Ole Miss waiting on Deion Smith. And I do think that this is going to be entirely worth the wait with the ramp up that he is going to have. Potentially, Deion Smith can help this Ole Miss offense. And that's the only thing you can ask for. Can he help this offense? There's other wide receivers that are out there. You know, Micah Davis, Jordan Watkins, Kaden Lee, Aiden Williams, Nareel White. There's a lot of players in this wide receiver room. None of them have the athletic ability to affect the defense and take attention away from your better players than Deion Smith. And that is why all of this will be worth it eventually. I genuinely think that Deion Smith is going to practice sooner than later. Everybody's going to worry, but as soon as Bruce Feldman reported it, Bruce Feldman didn't get that from Shea Hodge. Everybody Bruce Feldman gets that from higher level people. So him running with that story means that it's close enough to where everybody thought it was going to cross the finish line by tonight. And now you have 2 days until Thursday to get this just right. I expect Deion Smith to probably be out at practice Thursday morning. And it be a situation that Ole Miss is in good shape. Heck, it may have happened tonight to where after the media got escorted out, they ran him out there for an acclimation day in just a helmet. We're not 100% sure about that. But I'm genuinely thinking that this is going to be a beneficial situation in the end for Ole Miss. That's just my opinion on this. I think if you ask David Johnson from Inside the Rebels, he'd say pretty much the same thing. I think Chuck Rounsaville from the Ole Miss Spirit thinks this is almost at the finish line as well. And obviously, if Bruce Feldman is reporting this, this is kind of a big deal. So we'll see exactly how that goes. So coming up next, Kaden Lee is already raving about the wide receiver talent at Ole Miss. Now, we break down exactly why these playmakers have him so excited, especially the young ones. Don't miss it. Game Time is your place for Ole Miss tickets with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets. You know, there's not a bad seat at Vaught Hemingway Stadium, but Game Time makes it to where you can see exactly what the view will be from that seat. That's very important. Before you buy, they have the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, basically their customer service suite. Very, very good. So take the guesswork out of buying Ole Miss tickets with Game Time. And with this being the most anticipated season in Ole Miss history, I might be able to help you out with tickets as well. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. That's all one word. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for the exciting season on the gridiron with discussion of that upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape surrounding college athletics, including conference realignment, the portal, NIL, and the new expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Now, after practice on Monday, Kaden Lee met the media, and everybody knows my rules when it comes to press conference. I don't necessarily pay attention to what is said necessarily all the time, but I do pay attention a lot to who gets brought in and who they trust in front of a microphone. And Kaden Lee is kind of becoming that dude. And you've seen Ben Garrett with the Ole Miss Spirit and Brad and Logan, everybody talking about how Kaden Lee is expected to break out this year. And yes, I think Kaden Lee has all the talent in the world. I think Aiden Williams has all the talent in the world. But the one question that I have, where are these reps going to come from? That is the one pause that I have. Are you going to take Trey Harris off the field for Aiden Williams? Probably not. Juice Wells, Deion Smith, probably not. Jordan Watkins, probably not. There's a lot of good wide receivers in this room and excellent young wide receivers for Ole Miss. Aiden Williams and Kaden Lee are two of the best young wide receivers to come through Ole Miss in a while. They have all the talent in the world. They just need to get on the field and do it and produce. But where are those reps going to come from? I can see why people talk about these players are going to be the breakout players, because if you look at them, you assume that they would. But where are these reps going to come from? You know, I talked on our insider program, and insider Floyd Franks hit me up yesterday and started to talk about the scrimmage and all of this and seeing how Trey Harris operates as a former Archie Manning wide receiver in the late 60s, early 70s. He talked about the difference that the wide receiver tackified gloves make and the fact of how hungry Trey Harris is and how hungry these wide receivers look. And that's, again, making me wonder, where are the reps going to come from? I think Kaden Lee's a really good player. I think Aiden Williams a really good player. I think Nareel White's going to be a really good player. I think that these three players, that core, with the players that are coming in this recruiting cycle, they're going to go a long way in determining the winner of the 2025 quarterback competition between Austin Simmons and Walker Howard. It's a really interesting situation to see exactly how these young players are operating and this core moving up and the older core with Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and those guys. It's really interesting how that almost digits and arms and had all of that have come off of it. So we'll see exactly what happens. I'm very, very excited about what could happen in the wide receiver room at the lower levels as far as the younger levels go. But I just don't know where the reps are going to come from this year. Now, everybody jokes about Ole Miss 5 wide receivers, Ole Miss 5 wide receivers. Again, 5 wide receivers does not mean empty personnel. It doesn't. Ole Miss can be an 11 or 12 personnel and still run 5 wide receivers to where you set up the formation. They could still run Jackson Dart on quarterback powers and counters and things like that and have the wide receivers on the outside affecting the defense. I don't think people need to get too literal on the 5 wide receivers. They're not going to throw out there 5 wide receivers because that is going to require personnel to come on and off and give the other team a chance to substitute. Now, where I do think this is going to happen, and I did see the joke in the comments, by the way, Steve talking about 12 personnel must mean football season's getting close. And honestly, you're right. Daquan Wright and Kaden Prescorn, especially near the red zone with a Trey Harris and a Deion Smith, that is almost cheating at this point. So we'll see how that goes. I am a huge proponent of 12 personnel. I think there should be a series per game that is done out of 12 personnel. You don't have to necessarily line them up as a stack on the line tight end, but having 2 tight ends, either one split out and one playing the traditional H-back type role, that's something that would be on the table, and you would not necessarily lose a whole bunch by running it. Everybody knows that listens to this podcast even a little bit how much of a proponent I am of 12 personnel. Everybody knows that I think that 12 personnel could be what unlocks this offense. But with this offense being more pass-based, and more pass-based probably means, just so that everybody knows, Ole Miss is never going to be an air raid that's 60% pass. That's not going to happen. But when you look at what Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin did at FAU, they were 70% run early on in their tenure at FAU. Their last year, they were like 53% run. They were still run over pass, but they were 47% pass. And I think that Ole Miss football has a chance to look similar. I think that Ole Miss football has a chance to be closer to 50-50 than they've been in a very long time. Now, a lot of that has to do with RPOs and what the defense decides to give to the offense. With these wide receivers, I do think that the defense is going to just, hey, give them a run read and let's see what happens. And it's going to be on Ulysses Bentley and Henry Parrish and Rashad Amos to hurt the defense enough that they don't decide to do that. Last year was all engage 8 to try and force a pass read and get to the quarterback in a hurry. I don't think they're going to be able to do that this season. So we will see how the defense looks, whether they decide to play real tight, whether they decide to man up and go one-on-one on these outside wide receivers, whether or not these young guys can make it onto the field. Maybe it's a situation, I could be completely wrong, I guess, to where Ole Miss decides for the first time to play 7 wide receivers over the course of a game. But I think it's probably going to be closer to 5. You're going to have somebody like Trey Harris and Deion Smith and Juice Wells. Out of the 90 plays for Ole Miss in a game, they're going to get 70 of them. And the other 20 reps are going to be divided over the other formations, whether 12 personnel or maybe like Aiden Williams and all that getting a little bit in there. These are in games that are tight. I'm not talking about blowouts to where people are going to be able to play quite a bit. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Up next on Locked On Ole Miss, this season is all about managing expectations and avoiding those dangerous traps. There are 2 games that have my full attention. You will not want to miss why these could be pivotal. Stay tuned. So Ole Miss has an interesting schedule this season, and we're going to put the Locked On Ole Miss prediction up just so everybody can see what this schedule looks like. And there's two games that Ole Miss is probably going to be a 1 to 2 touchdown favorite in on the road that have me at least a little bit nervous. I do not think that I would put a trap in the situation of LSU, of Oklahoma, or Georgia. Those three games are going to be difficult games, and they're not traps. They're not a situation to where you're looking over them. But there are two games that could be at least very weird. And I do want to talk about that. And let's bring up the schedule right now. If you look at the Loom prediction, obviously I have Ole Miss winning those trap games, but I have the Loom prediction at 11-1. I think Ole Miss is going to be multiple 20-plus point favorites in their first road games, their first 4 games. And then the SEC play is going to start. You get the Kentucky game at home. Ole Miss should win that game. Ole Miss has a better football team than Kentucky. The first trap, though, is the next one, and that is at South Carolina. South Carolina is jacked for this game. Whatever it is, they want to beat Juice Wells with the fire of 1,000 suns. It is absolutely ridiculous, and everybody is going to be tight because Ole Miss is likely going to go into that South Carolina game 5-0 with LSU at LSU right after that. You're going to have a situation that Ole Miss is probably a 14-point favorite in that game. Ole Miss has a better team than South Carolina, but I can see that Ole Miss is going to have to bring their own energy because of what could happen. And you do not want a situation to where things spiral against you, especially with that LSU game the next week. If Ole Miss were to drop that South Carolina game and then drop that LSU game, it's win out or don't make the playoff. Your season could be over on October 12th. So you need to figure out a way to get that South Carolina game and then let the cards fall where they may, whether it be at LSU, Oklahoma at home. Whenever that happens and you have that brutal 3-game stretch, that leads you to the next trap game. And I think at Arkansas, a week before the Georgia game, is the next trap. Ole Miss never plays well in Fayetteville. I do not know why. I don't know what's going on. At Reynolds Razorback Stadium, I've seen Arkansas score a touchdown on an Ole Miss kickoff return. I've seen that happen. You wonder why it would happen. I've seen that happen. Ole Miss never plays well at Arkansas. So Ole Miss having to figure out a way to win that game. The first time they would win in Arkansas since 2008. Ole Miss is again going to probably be a 14 to 20 point favorite in this game. But we all remember in 2022, the last time that Ole Miss went to Fayetteville, it got weird. It got really weird. And Arkansas was up 35-6 or something like that at halftime. Arkansas is generally up to play Ole Miss, especially home games versus Ole Miss. Ole Miss has to figure out a way to win that game. Now, those are the true 2 trap games, in my opinion. You want to talk about worst case scenario? I think we had a question in the comments about the worst case this season. Ole Miss drops one of those 2 games. They drop the LSU game. They drop the Georgia game. And then after the Georgia game gets beat, they drop the Florida game. I think 8-4 is the floor of this team. It'd be a disaster. The sky would be falling if that happened. But I do think that there is a path for that. I think the trap games, Ole Miss is going to figure out a way to get one of them, but you have those other difficult games that could happen. And like I said, once you lose to Georgia and the season's over and this last dance season, that Florida game and that Mississippi State game becomes weird. It's just the way it is. But we'll see how it goes. Those are trap games to me. Now, the difficult games, the ones that you actually really have to worry about that Ole Miss is either going to be an underdog in or like a 3 to 5 point favorite or 7 point favorite, would be the Georgia, LSU, and Oklahoma game. Those are the ones of evenly matched teams occasionally. Oklahoma is going to bring 50,000 people to Oxford. I hate that that's an 11 o'clock in the morning game. And I do want to apologize to my Oklahoma brethren about that, because you get the Grove and you don't really get the Grove. You get to go see a bunch of tents that are very little set up on the green. So we'll see exactly how that goes for Ole Miss and what is going on. We'll see. Should be really fun indeed. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives. It's why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast out there, and your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. He'll get you hyped up for an exciting season with in-depth discussions on all of the upcoming games and the ever-evolving landscape of college football, from conference realignment to the portal to NIL and the new college football playoffs. Spencer covers it all. You can find it all on Locked On College Football on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's also the Locked On College Sports live stream that can be found at the Locked On College Football YouTube page. And also exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss Insider, the best and the easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss. Our texting program sends you notifications on everything relevant without the hassle of message boards filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial. Experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is in the description down below. For all of you watching on YouTube, we will send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.